1966, Art's first new car, and it's only $76.51 a month for 3 years. The story of this Chevelle was written by Mike Felix and illustrated in plastic by members of the Town of Newburgh Model Car Club. You guys are saying this was one of their most successful covers, highest selling?
Right.
That's what I've been told by Gary Schmidt and Kirk Bell over a period of years.
And Jim had said that they sold out of this issue so fast.
Yeah.
And we think it might have been because of the wreck on the front with Ron Weissinger.
Well, hopefully that was the reason. I don't know.
No, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
I'm here with my club, the Town of Newburgh Model Car Club.
I'm Ron Weissinger.
Rick Hanmore.
Vince LoBosco.
Don Betterton.
Mike Felix.
And Doug White. I didn't build a model for this.
But you photographed him.
I did, and that was a great pleasure. I've been a member of the club for not quite 30 years. This project that was on the cover of Scale Auto was from how many years ago?
32 years ago, 1991.
I joined soon after that. 1968. Art's daughter Madge borrows the car and misjudges a turn. Madge is grounded. How did this start out?
I had a client in Waukesha, Wisconsin, which was where the magazine was based. I was going to visit the client, called up Gary Schmidt. I said, I'm a subscriber. Could I pitch an idea to you? So he said, sure. So I went, pitched the idea of a club building a series of chronologically ordered cars from the time it was bought new at the dealership till the time it was scrapped or sold for parts in a yard sale. So he loved it. I came back. Rick and I spent a lot of time talking to the club. This idea, do you guys think you want to do it? And by and large, everybody who was there said, sure, we'd love to build it. So we talked about, what kit to use. We were originally going to use the AMT 55 Chevy, but it wasn't ready to be sold to the public at that point in time. Then we went out, and I think we bought that horrible green street rod kit, right? So we bought the street rod kit 67 Chevelle because it was available, and we couldn't get the 55 AMT. Chevy.
Is there green plastic?
No, this was blue.
There was a green plastic one, but we ended up using, when this came out, then they molded it in blue. It was blue plastic.
This was blue
The
plastic.
green was the street machine that had the tubs.
Yeah.
So we didn't use that one, right?
Okay.
No, that wasn't that
We ended
car.
up using the blue version.
This was the Revell.
Revell. Yeah.
Okay.
But I know what you're thinking of, the green
right. And
this
Ken,
machine version that came out at the same time.
This was almost a new release too when we did this.
it
It was.
Ken voiced his displeasure at it not being
Right,
the
that it-
55 Chevy.
Yes.
Quite a few
And the
times.
fact that it was molded in blue, and he had to paint it red.
Right.
Art brings it to his old buddy Red for repairs.
So we then said to the various members of the club, okay, we need somebody to build it stock. Who would like to build it stock? Chuck Stark, I think it was, right? Who said, sure, I'll build a stock one. Then we went down the line with how the car would go through various stages. We all talked about it, and different guys would step up and say, sure, I'll build that particular one. And then we talked about, well, how do we keep the story so that if you look at the first car, you can see the natural progression. So we talked about if you make this modification, it's got to be in the next one. So we did take some measurements. We wrote down measurements. A few of us met each other at each other's homes and compared what we were doing. So for instance, I'm next to the one built by Dick Schoonmaker, and he and I met in his house, and we drilled the holes at the same time in two different bodies. And John Stachura, who did one in a similar vein, same thing. We met with him, drilled all the holes in the body so they're all in the same place. And we were just fortunate. The enthusiasm was there. Just all came together.
Red's quality job is almost done, but the headlight, chrome hood vents, fender emblem, and chrome hood strip are still missing.
At various meetings, I would read the story as I developed it, and everybody seemed to like what we were coming up with, so we just kept it. And then contacted Gary Schmidt. He liked what I had written up, and literally it was written by hand in ink, because I didn't have the word processor. I didn't have a typewriter. So he said, that's okay, just mail it to me. So I mailed it to him. He says, yep, I like it. And he said, who's going to do the photography? Contacted you. And you said, sure, I'd love to do the photography. I worked in Lower Manhattan at the time. You told me which subways to take and where to change. And I was on the subway with this huge bag, and don't touch me, don't come near me, And went up to your loft, and you just did a beautiful job of representing the cars originally in a chronology, then each one individually. I think your photography also captured the perspective that highlights each car.
Well, thank you. It was just great doing it. And when you were pulling those in my studio, pulling them out of the box, it was like each one to look at it, look at the detail. See, that's the great thing about being the photographer. You know, I not only do I get to see it like as it's sitting there, but I get to look through the lens and see all that's going on. And there's detail that you see in the lens that you don't necessarily get. It's two-dimensional. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
You get that two-dimensional thing going on, and you see things that you don't normally get to see or realize that exist.
The day that you were going to photograph them, you know, I commuted to work the normal way on the train, get in the office and I have this giant bag full of boxes. And eventually, you know, people come up to me, what's that? So I say, well, it's models. What kind of models? I mean, car models. So eventually, before I got to see you, went up by subway up to see you, I had to take them out.
Yeah.
So I was in the boardroom, taking the boxes out and then lining them all up. And they're like, wow, this is crazy. You know? So then put them all back in the box, go see you.
1972. Between family vacation trips and toting the kids around town, the car becomes haggard.
And as was stated earlier, I think what really made this successful was the fact that Ron built a very convincing wreck, and Gary chose to put that on the cover of the magazine. Yeah. And I think that's what sucked everybody in.
I think Ron should tell the story about how fast he built the wreck. Right?
Well, that is interesting. We went to the meeting one night, and Mike Callan had this one already started. He had the fender cut off and the door and the frame already bent. And so I chose the wreck one because I've built a lot of stock cars and smashed a lot of panels with candles.
Yeah.
So I had a little experience with that. So I said, well, I'll try that. And so I had to build mine similar to what Mike had, like the front bent up, like I hit a pole. I got started, and I did that in 2 weeks' time.
Wow. No kidding.
Yep.
Yeah.
And nobody believed it.
And nobody believed me. Ken
believed it.
Uhler said, you're sandbagging. He says, I know you started that a month ago.
We were at the meeting 1 month, and Ron didn't have it. The
didn't
next
have
month, Ron shows up at the meeting with that fabulous wreck.
Yeah.
And everybody thought, there's no way you did that since the last meeting.
And it's the cover car.
Right.
Yeah. I was very fortunate cracking the windshield the way it is. I just laid it flat on a workbench and rolled an X-Acto knife over it. Kept rolling it over it.
Yeah.
And it stress cracked it. But I don't know whether it was the right temperature or the right plastic, but it worked. And each piece was heated with the candle and bent each separate piece. The grill, the bumper, the hood, the fender, everything separate.
Crazy.
And you did that with one kit, no backup parts, just
No
in
backup
case it didn't
part.
go.
Nope.
Oh, boy.
No.
Degree of difficulty there.
I was relatively new with a lot of ideas. And somebody had told me to paint the primer first and put rubber cement down where the creases are, or where I want it to be chipped. And I said, okay, I'll try that. And I painted it, and when I was done, pulled the rubber off, and it was really cool. It flakes the paint, curls the paint as though it's cracked.
So you were not only doing this as a quick, rapid build, you were trying new techniques, experimenting,
too.
and being successful.
And one of the cool things he did was the antifreeze. You got antifreeze spilling out.
I had transparent
like
green.
like you would have in a radiator.
And I just drizzled it all over everything under the hood.
Yeah, that was great.
That was great.
1974. Art Jr. gets the car from Dad and likes to go cruising on Broadway.
It was fun, but there was so much coordination between the colors. We had to make sure that each person used the exact same primer and the same red paint. And we had to coordinate all these little buttons, like where the chrome would attach.
Right.
And, so we had a lot of coordination between everybody, but it was fun.
Yeah.
It was really
It's amazing
fun.
that we pulled it off. Sometimes you think,
Yeah.
would we be able to recreate that now? I'm not sure that we would. You know, somehow back then we built, and it didn't take long. I don't think, what was it, maybe 3 months from
Something
start to finish.
Yeah, it wasn't all that long.
It wasn't a long process, and I think now how long it takes us to build a model, I think we'd be hard pressed today to do it.
What's also interesting is we did this, and because of it, we got contacted from all over the place by people who were interested in it, and we got published in other magazines as a consequence.
German magazine?
The Chevelle Owners Association called us. So, you know, we didn't expect to get this kind of popular response, but we did, and it went on for years. So we would go someplace, and people would go, "That's the Project Chevelle? You guys did the Project Chevelle?" So we were known, and we didn't know it.
1976, Art Jr. sells the car to Ernie, who turns it into a low-buck drag machine.
And we displayed this at the NML East.
Right.
We had all the cars together, and all of us were there at the time. Right? Everyone was there. We had the cars all on display, all in a line, and people couldn't believe that we had coordinated step by step by step, from the car being new to the car in the body shop to the car when it was rusted, and Ken Uhler put the snow tires on it and put real rust that he let a bolt. I think he had a bolt soaking in the water, and he scraped off the rust and he put it on the back. And then when I built the car that the high school kid had, then I put patches and primer everywhere where Ken had the rust, right? And then we went on to the next step when it got turned into a drag car. And then when John Stachura built it as a race car, and then Mike took it over at the end with the pipes on top, right? It was converted to a farm vehicle. So all that was coordinated throughout the whole process until the very end when Rick built it at the swap meet, Art selling his parts. Because Mike came up with the name of Art, right? Art bought the car.
Yeah, we thought Art might play with it.
Yeah.
That was all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we always, as we tend now to call each other Dave, at that point in time, we were all calling each other Art.
Right.
So that's why Art is the name
He's
of the
like our
job.
club mascot.
Yes.
Yes. They have a little stick figure drawing on the newsletter. Art.
Right. Waving his hand with the hat on.
Yeah.
1978, Ernie sells the car back to Art Jr., who races at Orange County Speedway until he finds out that racing isn't so easy.
You know, you mentioned before about we got a lot of recognition on this. Well, I just recently moved down to South Carolina and joined a model club down there. And I was telling one of the guys that came from the town, Newburgh Model Car Club, he goes, "Did you guys do that Chevelle?" And that was over 30 years ago. So, and he remembered that to this day. I said, "Well, yeah." He goes, "You got 11 guys to do all that models?" I said, "Yeah, it wasn't that hard, really, you know."
No,
It's true.
I don't remember
It
there
really
being
wasn't.
a lot of problems getting. You know, everybody stepped up and picked out what they wanted to do, and everybody kept up.
Yeah, and I
pace,
think
so it
part of
worked
the
out.
success of the club was just that nobody had any pressure on him to do anything. And, you know, Don was brand new. We really didn't know him. He was brought right into the fold right away and was part of it. One of the guys who built one of the cars was in high school. He was like 16.
Yeah.
Right. Ron Washburn. Right? Ron Washburn built the drag version. And we were fortunate enough when Mark asked us to donate Project Chevelle to the museum back in '05. Most of us were all still in communication and around. We had all the cars except the drag car from Ron Washburn. And he had moved away. He went to school. He became an attorney. I remember somebody said he was an attorney in Boston. I started looking around. I tracked him down, and I called him. I told him who I was. He remembered. And I said, "Hey," I said, "Ron, we're trying to get these cars together. We have to bring them out to Salt Lake City to the museum." I said, "Do you still have the car?" He said, "It's all broken up, but it's still in a box somewhere in my parents' basement." He tracked it down, and one day in the mail, a box showed up with this broken Chevelle, but luckily the body was still intact with all the decals. And Bob Patine from our club, he volunteered to restore it, and Bob came out here with us when we did the presentation to the museum. Remember, a lot of us were sitting at the table when we did the presentation, and Bob said, "How, you know, I'm not Ron Washburn, but I restored the car for Ron because he couldn't be here." And so we ended up having all the cars. Thankfully that we were able to obtain that one. Otherwise, we would have had to recreate it.
And that is a beautiful eye-level display.
Yeah, at the museum, it's great. Yeah.
1980, Art Jr. gives the car to Grandpa for farm transportation.
It wasn't long after this was published, Mark Gustafson then contacted me and said that one day, if you guys are open to it, I'd love to have this in the museum. So we had discussions amongst ourselves at meetings saying, you really want to give it up?
Yeah.
You know? So we all agreed, okay.
It was hard.
It's going to go in a glass case.
Yeah.
Go in a glass case, but it's then complete.
Right.
Right,
And I
now
think
they
that's
stay
what
together
helped them.
forever.
That was
Yeah.
a Herculean effort on its own, just
Yep.
get them to assure they were all
Yep.
there as a
Yep.
complete set.
Yeah.
1984. Old man Millard gets the car from Grandpa, rolls it, and gives up on it.
And that all worked out. What a great project. And
was
I had
fun.
such a great time photographing it too.
It was. I think it brought us all together too.
Sure.
A lot of us were new to the club then.
It was fun.
and it really did. Then we did the police cars after that you also photographed.
That's right.
To expand, again, Gary calls me and says, we sell so many magazines, it's great, blah, 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 blah. I want to get that popularity transferred to Car Model. So can you have the club do something for Car Model? And I said, well, okay. So we came in, Rick and I would talk and say, how about we pitch ideas? And we pitched the evolution of police cars in New York City or New York State.
Right.
And Gary said, okay, great idea. Again, we built them and then you photographed them.
Right.
And he told me it was a very popular car model.
Those were good times. We should try it again. Right, we should.
Yeah, we should do it in reverse. And start with an abandoned, wrecked car in a field, rusted.
Great idea.
There you
And then
go.
show its progressive restoration to a new car.
New floor.
Do the whole story backwards.
It'd probably take us 4 times as long to build it now.
Yeah, it was cool.
1986. Art cleans out the garage to make room for the grandchildren's bikes.